going to talk a little bit more about closed syllables. So closed syllables are the most common syllable type that we have in our language. And it's the syllable type that we start with the kids to get them familiar with all the different types. Because it's the most frequent, makes the most sense to do that first. So if we have a closed syllable, the definition of a closed syllable is it is a syllable that has one vowel sound, one vowel, followed by one or more consonants. So if I have the word cat, if I didn't know how to read this, I'd first look for my vowel. I'd look to see that it is followed by one or more consonants, and then I would be able to know that that says at. Now, if the word were longer and I had this, it would be the same thing because it's still one vowel followed by one or more consonants, so that vowel is still going to say its sound, which is at. So even if I had this word, one vowel followed by one or more consonants, it does not matter that there's nothing here, because in it or at, they're still going to say their sound, the vowel sound it or the vowel sound at, because it's followed by one or more consonants. So what happens is kids understand this, and they understand at a single syllable level, and it seems pretty easy. But when we start putting them together, that's where it can start to get a little bit confusing. So that's why it's so important to use the supersized syllables. So the supersized syllables are basically just the 6 different syllable types on big cards so that you can use them for manipulating in front of the class. So the first thing you do when you're holding these up for the kids is you want them to say what type of syllable first. You don't want them to say vol, closed, because they can already read it. The whole point of doing syllable division is to help you to figure out what the words are. So you want them to say closed, vol, okay. Closed, next. Because by saying the type of syllable, it's going to help them to know what the vowel says. And we're going to teach them multiple syllable types after this, so we want them to get the habit. Of course, they're only going to be closed syllables. We've only taught closed syllables, but that's okay. So here, then we can start putting them up and having them blend them together. So let's blend this. If we have vol, next, and put that together, vol, next. Not a real word, but technically it could be. These are all real syllables. So then we'd look at this one, and we would say closed, prob. So this word is vol, next, prob. Okay? Obviously not a real word. Okay? So then the next one, we would say closed, ject. Vol, next, ject. Okay? So they're just going to get practice putting words, syllables together and blending them into words, because that's really, any word that they've never seen before is a nonsense word to them. And so as kids get into the upper grades, what happens is they have so much content area and so many different vocabulary words. If they don't have a strategy for how to figure these out, they try to memorize, and memorization is not the most efficient way. So as we're manipulating these around, they're realizing that really a word is only 3, 4, 5 letter chunks smushed together to become something really, really long. Over the years, I've worked with so many kids who they could do this, but if I were to write this out, they would freak out because it looks so long they couldn't possibly do it. So when you're using the supersized syllables, it gives them confidence. They see, oh, I could do that. Ha, vol, next, ject, that's a funny word, and they laugh. And then you say, okay, what's this? And they'll say closed, plish. What's that word? Vol, plish, ject. Okay, that's kind of a weird word as well. Then we have closed, diff, vol, diff, ject. Okay, but what they're realizing is that words are just chunks that move around, and eventually they'll start noticing prefixes and suffixes, and we'll be teaching them roots, and so they'll see, oh, unicorn, unicycle, una means one, and how these things kind of relate to each other, because ject means to throw. So this could mean just throw your vol diff, whatever a vol diff might be. I have no idea. But if you have a kid that is looking at this word, this looks easy, but when you put it together, this is when it starts to look difficult for them, because I'll show them this and they're like, that's easy, ball dipject. But then when I put it up here, they're like, oh, that looks really long. And it's intimidating to them. But that's where we teach them how to break them down into syllables by identifying the vowels. So if we underline our vowels, basically we underline our vowels, that means everything else is a consonant. So we look at this and we're going to say, okay, where do we break it? Now I've only taught closed syllables, so that's really the only option that they have right now. But we have to figure out where are we going to break it. So when we look at it, we would say, okay, is LD a beginning blend? So we need a consonant there anyway because we only have closed syllables, and LD is not a beginning blend. So you'd never see a word that starts with LD. So we would break it here. Then we look here, and is FJ an ending blend? I've never seen a word that ends in FJ. And, so is FJ a beginning blend? No, I've never seen that as well. So I would divide here, because they'll have learned consonant blends, hopefully pretty well in the past. So now we look at it and we would say, okay, is this one vowel followed by one or more consonants? It is, so it's a closed syllable. One vowel followed by one or more consonants, so it's a closed syllable. And one vowel followed by one or more consonants, it's also a closed syllable. Now that we know the closed syllables, we know what our vowel says, and this word is ball, dip, ject. Okay? And we can just sound it out, ball, dip, ject. So it's not as intimidating as long as you're using the supersized syllables, because if we go and we say, okay, we have closed, glim, glim, dipject, closed, sin, glim, sinject, okay, closed, dwin, glim, sindwin. It would be the same thing. If we wanted to make this glim, sin, dwinject, we could do that as well, and we'd end up dividing it similarly. So this way, the kids are really understanding that each card is a syllable. When I break down the words, that's all I'm doing is the same thing. And so it's more manageable and it's easier for them to break down, gives them more confidence when they're reading, which makes them better readers because they're not stressed out and they don't feel like they need to just guess from what the word looks like or the beginning sound. Okay, so we're going to do some more practice with syllable division now. Now we're going to do closed syllable division. So we taught them what a closed syllable was, and now we're going to practice on some real words. So the first thing we do always is read our directions, and it says underline the vowels, then divide and label the syllables. So the first thing we're going to do with number 1 is we're going to underline our vowels. And we have 2 vowels, which means everything else is a consonant. Now we have to figure out where to divide. We've only learned closed syllables, so it's going to be pretty easy because we're going to have closed. So now what we're going to do is we look for our vowel, we're going to close it in, and what's going to happen is we're going to do after the B, because BJ is not an ending blend, so a syllable would never end with that kind of SUBJ. So we know that it's going to divide there, and that makes it closed. Okay? So we have subject, and our vowels are both going to say their sounds. They don't have an opportunity to say anything else because it's closed. Okay? So if we go down here and we underline our vowels, okay, we have 2 vowels. We know it's going to be 2 syllables, and we're going to divide in between. So we're going to go in between and end up with closed again, and our word is going to be prospect. Okay, we come down to the next one, we underline our vowels, we know we have 2 syllables, we're going to divide, and we have project. Now this is where things can get confusing when it comes to dictionary division, because some people would say it's project, so after the O, but based on syllable division, that becomes project, which can be a word. I can project my voice, or I can have a project, and we're going to talk about later the difference between a syllable
and a morpheme, and a unit of meaning is what a morpheme is. And so if we were looking at this for morphemes, this would be a unit of meaning, and this would be a unit of meaning because it means to throw forward, okay? But if we're just working on syllable division, then we're going to look for pronunciation because we want to be able to read it, and then we can worry about understanding it, okay? Sometimes it goes, both ways where we're looking at the morphemes to understand it so that we can read it, okay? But at this point, we're just doing syllable division, so we want to look at the syllables. So we're going to underline our vowels, and then we're going to divide, and this again would be close, closed, and would be insist, okay? You guys have the keys to all of these word lists, so if you're not sure where to divide or you're not sure how to label, those are all taken care of for you. Now, some people want to slash, so they go impact for their syllables. I encourage you to scoop because later when we do morphemes, we're going to be doing squares around it, and then you won't be able to see the difference between the two, okay? So those are real words. Now, real words are always easier because you probably know how to read all of these words. And syllable division really just helps you read words you've never come across before. So that's why we need to practice with nonsense words. And I know these look ridiculous, and that's okay because they're not real, but what they do is they give kids practice with what they do when they come across a word they've never seen before. And that's what syllable division is used for. So we're going to do the same exact thing. We're going to underline our vowels, and we have two. We know we're going to have two syllables. Now we have to figure out where to divide. Now, TH can be one sound, so I would probably divide this as frothed. Now, is this a word? No, it's not a word. But I can defend the way that I broke that up because TH is one sound. Now, a kid might say, I made it frothib and broke up the T and the H, and as long as they're pronouncing it correctly, then I'm okay with that. So if we go down here and divide, a student might say mistob, like mistake, or they might say mist-ob. Either way, when you blend it together, it's going to sound pretty much the same. Mistob, mistob, right? Because both vowels are going to say their sound, and they're both going to be closed. So when you blend it, it's going to sound really similar, okay? Now, typically I'd like to say we like to keep our consonant blends together, but you want to try it both ways to see which way sounds better. Now, if we come over here and we underline our vowels, we have no choice where to divide, because anytime you have double consonants, it's there for a reason. It's there to protect that vowel. So here we have to divide between our double consonant because it's the same letter. That means it's trying to protect that A from having to say its name. So you always divide between your double consonants. So this would be it closed, closed, and our word would be bracket. Okay. Let's look at one that might be a little confusing. If we go down here to 14 and underline, AMP, MP is an ending blend like lamp, but PL is also a beginning blend like please. So which one do I divide between? It's going to kind of depend on what you want to do, but it's still going to make the same vowel sounds, which is going to make it sound the same when you blend it. So if it were amplig or amplig, it's really going to sound the same in the end once it's blended. So, but that's a combination where you couldn't put it after the L because AMPL is not an ending blend. You're not going to see that at the end of a syllable anywhere. But you might see MP, you might see PL, but you're not going to see MPL at the beginning of a syllable either. Okay? So that's practice with nonsense words and with real words. And don't forget, you have the keys and access to all these worksheets.